And I want to select an individual who has a commitment to UMKC for at least the next 10 years to do the difficult work of developing a strategic plan that focuses on excellence, that focuses on student success, research, creative and artistic works, engagement with the community, the city, citizens of Missouri, and places the value of our research and education in the context of improving society. So we're going to have a very lively discussion today, I hope, where you get to ask us questions about the process, about the qualities that you seek in the individual to lead this university. But it all begins by having an outstanding committee. And that committee is led by Professor Linda Mitchell, as well as Mr. Terry Dunn, who is a tremendous supporter, not only of Kansas City activities, but UMKC. So with that, let me turn it over to Professor Linda Mitchell.
Thank you, President Choi. I just want to say that I'm honored to be co-chairing this search with Terry Dunn, and that I'm very honored that President Choi asked me to do so. For those of you who don't know, and yeah, isn't that a great picture? Not. I'm professor of history, and I hold the endowed chair in women's and gender studies here at UMKC. I'm also the chair of Faculty Senate, and it is in that capacity that I serve you, the faculty and the staff and the students at this institution. I think it's really important to point out that having a faculty member chair this committee, co-chair this committee, is extraordinary. And it's a real testament to the leadership of President Choi that he felt that this was an important component in the process of doing this search. So with that, I'd like to start our conversation. We have colleagues to recognize from the University of Missouri system, Tim McIntyre, Marcus Glover, and Tracy Femler, whose name I've been writing to her on email for ages and never knew how to pronounce her name. They have been instrumental in getting us on board and on task with this search. I also want to recognize the members of the search committee, if they could stand up while I do this. This is an incredibly diverse group of people. Thanks, guys. They include members of the faculty, students, staff members, members of the administration, deans, and members of the community and stakeholders of UMKC. And we had an amazing conversation this morning. I'm really happy with how this is going and where this is heading. And that's where we come to you. The reason why we're here is to get an idea about what you see in our future chancellor. What is it that you want? How do you envision the chancellor working with you and with the future of the institution, and how all of this is going to get wrapped up in the person of somebody who's really going to be representing us on a national scale to the public. So that's the purpose of this forum. We're focusing in this forum on faculty and staff and students. We'll be having conversations with other stakeholders throughout the day, but this is where we are right now. So this is a listening session for us. What we're going to be doing is asking you what you are interested in. We have microphones that are on either side for people to talk into the mic. We have cameras, and we're recording all of this. We're also going to be taking notes, so that screen up there is going to be identifying and writing out what people are commenting on and how people are using this opportunity to share with us what they see as the qualities of a good chancellor. And if you have any concerns about what you see written, you can please do correct the transcript so that we have an accurate recording of the statements that you are all making. If there are any members of the press here, we are happy to talk to you after the forum. So, moving, I have to check my order of business here. So, first of all, what experiences do you feel are essential to make a good candidate for chancellor? These are some of the issues that that we have been looking at. Obviously, they include both structural issues as well as conceptual and philosophical issues. But we would really like you to speak to this. And I'm willing to start this going. Or I could just do the Bueller routine that I do in classes sometimes.
So are there characteristics, experiences that are missing from this that you would like to see included?
Wow, we must be really good at our jobs.
Yes, back there. Can you introduce
Sully.
yourself as well?
Hi, I'm Sullivan Reed, and I'm a professor in the School of Biological Sciences. Mm-hmm. I think it's important that the chancellor be an eminent scholar. I think also to have experience running a large organization. But that large organization, I would prefer to be a university as opposed to a business. In terms of some of the things up there, some of the areas that I don't think are important is I don't think someone should be ruled out because they don't have a specific experience in urban engagement. I think you may well have candidates who are very good who would come from a state university such as Penn State, say, that is out in the middle of the country. I think it's important that they have experience engaging the state and engaging the city, but they don't have to come from a...
So one way that we can think about this is not only experiences, but also interests, whether they have an interest. And I think being in an urban area, having an interest of engaging our stakeholders is very important.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I think I think that is very true. I was just commenting that one way that could be interpreted is saying that they had to come from that kind of background, and I don't think that's valid.
So, in other words, Sully, you don't envision that we absolutely need somebody who is coming from a dean or a provost position at another urban serving university, but it has to be somebody who understands the challenges that we have here in Kansas City and in the metropolitan area.
Yes, and I think quite a few of the problems that an effective provost at a different public university or a chancellor at a different public university will have encountered will be very similar to many of the problems here.
Thank you. Other people? Come on, this is your opportunity. If you want to make a change. Yes.
Hi there. I'm Dave Renz, member of the faculty in the Block School, and I like all of the categories that are up there. Leaping tall buildings at a single bound isn't there, but I'm sure it's covered in something there. And that's, I think, of course, part of the challenge that the committee has to confront, also the opportunity. I would like to say that those categories are all appropriate, but the thing I would look for is that they understand what they all mean, but they're not necessarily experienced in all of them, because frankly, and I'm biased by what I do, but I teach public service leadership and management, what we need is someone who can be a strategic executive who understands that kind of challenge in the current fiscal political environment and quite honestly is able to see how it connects with the pieces that are up there. And I guess the metaphor sometimes we use in discussing with managers who are moving up in organizations we work with is that you need someone who understands how to be above, and I don't mean this in a pejorative sense at all, but they need to be above the bricklayer or wall builder perspective. They need to be at the level of an architect and project manager leader kind of a role. We need someone who can connect the dots across multiple boundaries. And so, for example, shared governance is a critical thing for people to understand. To our previous colleagues' observation, I would add that that is something that is particularly confusing to almost all for-profit executives when they come around and look and say, wow, the inmates are running the place. It's really something. That shared governance process is a source of great power, but it's also quite confusing to most people. And while every job has a learning cycle, I would hate to see a new chancellor come in who hadn't had a fairly substantive sense of what that means, and ideally, as your header up there says, demonstrated experience there.
Thank you.
I would like to expand on that.
Clara, could you identify yourself?
Clara Irazabal, Director of the Latinx and Latin American Studies Program and Professor in Urban Planning. I'd like to expand on what was just said to suggest that the person should be a visionary. And it is not quite represented by leadership and advocacy, because you can be a leader to shepherd people in the direction that they are currently going, to maintain the status quo, and you can advocate for the same purpose, but to have a vision, a distinct vision that not only allows for us to do well under the current constraints of the budget, but also to imagine what would it take to resist it. I don't know why anybody is talking about resistance to this matter, and how is it that we as a community could organize and have a visionary leader that would support us doing that, because this is unsustainable.
Thank you, Clara. I think that leads us nicely into the next slide, which has, one more person. Wayne?
Wayne Vaught, Dean of Arts and Sciences. One thing that wasn't on there, and maybe it's an expansion of the urban engagement, but certainly somebody who is a community engagement, community builder. I think one of the legacies of our Leo will leave at this institution is the relationships he built between UMKC and the community. When I got here 20 some odd years ago, I remember driving up and there was this UMKC Kills Our Homes plaques all up and down the streets, and I think community relations was at an all-time low. He's done a really good job. Whoever comes in really needs to build on that and has to be a community builder, someone who bridges the academy with the greater Kansas City community, which would include urban engagement, but certainly engagement with all the community leaders, business leaders, all of the people that are really going to be critical to our success moving forward. So I think that wasn't up there, and I think really is critical.
Yes.
Rodney Smith. I'm the Associate Director for Student Success here at the in the Student Affairs and Enrollment Management, also adjunct for the University College. I want to double down on Dean Vaught's comments in that I think that as an institution of higher learning in an urban community, all that we do in academia should be in service to the community in some way. I think too often we've seen a separation, unfortunately, this ivory tower mentality when it comes to our engagement with the community that surrounds us. But what good are we if we can't help the community in which we're a part of? So I'll double down on Dean Vaughn's comments.
Is that
We have one more
okay?
back here.
Because we have some other questions to ask you that I think are starting to speak to some of the issues that people are talking about. Yes.
Hi, I'm Holly Fieldman. I teach in the conservatory. Of the three things I see up there, the group that includes shared governance, advocacy, and research and scholarship.
Can you put the mic closer?
Somehow sticks out to me, that group of shared governance, advocacy, research and scholarship. And to take from a couple of earlier points, I would say that okay, first of all, shared governance cannot be a top-down affair. And I think increasingly that's how it's understood. And that means both that faculty has to press for a greater role, and also that administration allow for and encourage that greater role, including the role of initiator of ideas and progress. Shared governance is also, I think, part of advocacy. Advocacy for the institution, for the need for an institution such as a research institution in a place like Kansas City. The idea that doing research at a research institution is not opposed to community interests, and not in spite of community interests, and not in ignorance of community interests, so that advocacy and research and scholarship can be seen to go together to form a powerful thing. I think we need this in a new chancellor. Thanks.
Any other takers? Yes.
All right, probably hardly anybody here knows me. I'm Sam Turner. I'm the Associate Dean for Diversity and Inclusion at the School of Medicine. When I think of some of the failings of academic institutions, and my perspective on advocacy is that, we really are getting much better at creating an environment where people feel inclusive and they feel part of everything. The challenges that we have is that the talent pool is shrinking so much because of things like the criminal justice system. And I think that universities, when we talk about advocacy, we need to get involved with what's going on in the community, those things that affect the community at large, and become advocates for those who are on the margins. I think about some of the things that happened on the main campus it was in Columbia. And, just feeling like, well, it wasn't happening on our campus. Those people were coming from the community. Well, our students, our talent pool needs to, we need to fight for them throughout the community, or we won't have a talent pool. When I think of underrepresented minorities, for instance, it's so much different than it was when I was to society is when I went to law school in '74. Now everybody's in jail or they're in the system, and we feel like all we have to do is be good to them when they come. Some kind of way we've got to become advocates in our communities.
Thanks. So these are the demonstrated experiences that we want in a chancellor, but what are the leadership characteristics? We have some examples here that we have talked about, leading complex organizations, executive leadership styles, vision, as Clara was mentioning, effectively stewarding resources, passionate and purposeful leader, and a leader in strategic planning and implementation. But certainly there are other qualities that you envision in a chancellor that go beyond their professional experience or their work experience, that you think would be important. And some of those issues have already been mentioned, but I'm sure that many of you have things to share and ideas to contribute. So, yes.
Barb Glessner-Fines, Interim Dean at the Law School. I'd like to have a chancellor who has courage to be able to speak out on behalf of higher education generally, on behalf of the community, on behalf of our students, in the face of strong challenge and fear. I'd like to have a leader who has rock solid integrity, that their word is their bond, that what you see is what you get. I would like to have a leader who has a strong sense of honor.
Tamara Hoffman from the School of Dentistry. This is a little intimidating. I think there's two things that that I'd like to see. One be accountability, being able to hold themselves accountable, but as well as us, the different units, with the budget being the way it is, and all of us need to be more fiscally responsible. Being able to hold us all accountable to our responsibilities in that sense. And then also expanding on passionate, we had mentioned earlier, someone who, education versus business, and being down at the dental school, we're education plus a business. So we need someone who's going to be able to identify and relate to us on those terms. So that's what I have.
Do we have others? Please don't be intimidated. We're a friendly group.
I'll say something again, I guess. Dave Renz here from the Block School. Included in what's up there, no doubt, but under legislative and executive leadership style, it sounds actually a little embarrassing to have to say it, but in recent years we've not had any challenges with this. But in the field of leadership research, it's become increasingly clear that emotional intelligence is an extremely powerful and critical capacity to have. And I have to say that I've been privileged to work with chancellors and executives who've had that lately, but we haven't always.
I don't need to stand. I would add to that piece the ability to...
Could you identify who you are?
Sorry, Sean Grube, Director of Student Housing.
Thanks.
I would also add to that the ability to build and lead effective teams. That's not always a skill that everyone has, and I think it's important to mention.
We have another series of questions for you, of course, right? This is... Being an academic institution, we're all about asking questions. So the next slide has to do with qualities. What kind of qualities do you feel are essential in a chancellor? And it's, again, this is following back on points that have been raised already, but really kind of focusing in on who, if you had an idea of who it was who was going to be representing you in front of the world, but also interacting with you, collaborating with you, reaching consensus with you, what kind of person would that be? And we have talked about integrity and vision, but certainly there are other qualities that I'm sure that you have all felt were important in a chancellor that we've already had the the fortunate experience to share with the Chancellor, but ones that we might not have experienced.
I would just, this Barb Glessner again, I'd add to this list humility. I think we've been very fortunate to be led by a Chancellor who, while being the face of UMKC very effectively, never made it about him. And that, I think, is a very effective thing.
Hi, I'm Kristen Abel, and I'm sorry I have no voice today, but from Marketing Communications. And I just want to emphasize empathy and relationship builder on this list. One of the things that I think is extremely important is to be seen by those who have positions of power on our campus. And that's not always the case, I think, at various universities that I've worked at. Here, this is, I think, one of Leo's really great qualities, and that I hope to see in a future chancellor. And I think it's important for faculty, for staff, and especially for students. And when I say be seen, I mean, even if it's just I'm walking on campus and this person is walking, that they acknowledge that I'm there. And I think, has a tremendous impact on the people that are on our campus.
Thanks, Kristen. Others? Okay, so we were getting to the real wish list point of our listening session, and that is, what do you want a chancellor to work on, both in the short term and the long term? Because what we're really looking for is somebody who's going to be here for a while and who has the staying power, the stamina to continue to be our leader over a fairly significant period of time. So we've identified advocacy for public education as primary, and that's kind of a no-brainer. But the issue of advancing research, providing resource and program strategies, especially in our challenging fiscal times, serving our community, both internal to the university and the larger community of the Kansas City Metro and the state and the country, and cultivating educational programs that are inclusive and collaborative for improving student outcomes. But here is your opportunity to give us your wish list. What do you want the chancellor to do?
Dave Rains here, and I have a question.
Yes.
Has the committee and President Choi, have you come to any, at least interim conclusions about the relationship of the role of chancellor to the role of provost and other executives on the campus? Because that relationship and how they connect strikes me as pivotal to being able to comment on this.
So the relationship between the chancellor and the provost is key. Academic affairs at a university is the most important segment, most important responsibility that we have. So that relationship is key. But at the same time, we have programs like student success, student affairs, where counseling and mental health programs for our students are becoming much more important. We have research that needs to be emphasized because we are a public research university. We also train graduate students. We have to make sure that we train our graduate students with some of our best faculty members putting forth the effort that they need in the way that they wish they had been trained while they were in graduate school. There are so many of these activities that are very, very key. The chancellor, in many ways, has to be an effective conductor to ensure that each of these important elements are working together. But that relationship if you're asking about the relationship between the chancellor and the provost, that relationship has to be very key. Did that answer your question, or?
To some degree, yes. I guess to elaborate a little bit further, one of the strengths that I think we've had in the last cycle of executive relationships here on this campus was the division of duties with the provost serving in a significant academic leadership role, and the chancellor, while certainly being the chief executive of the campus, has been much more external and out in the community. And there are many ways to play this, and of course, to some extent, it's a chicken and egg question because it occurs, once you see who you have in your candidates, you can see where the synergies could be. But I'm wondering if there are any expectations at this stage.
So I expect the chancellor to be external facing as well as internal facing. The chancellor must have credibility within the academic community. That's going to be key. And I expect the chancellor to lead the university to greater heights when it comes to student success and research. And the chancellor cannot say to me after a few years of performance to say, well, my responsibility was external. Academic affair was the provost. If that person was selected as a chancellor, he or she is responsible for the entire enterprise. So I do expect external facing, because that's very important in this city, but someone who understands how academia works so that the resources that are needed to provide for higher stipend for graduate students, more scholarships for students who have the greatest financial need, all of those have to be on the minds of the chancellor. That he or she cannot delegate that to others, because it's so critical to what we do.
And if I might add, we did have some conversations about not specifically what these relationships were going to look like, or how the institutional structure was going to be in place. But I think that the consensus is that the chancellor and the provost need to be in a collaborative relationship in which both are looking at the university and also looking at the larger community, so that both, in fact, are sort of internal and external. They just have different degrees and different roles to play in that process. But I think this encapsulates something that one of the committee members said, that this person wants a chancellor whose email address is easily accessible and who responds to individuals communicating with him or her. And I think that that's really essential because the chancellor can't be the sort of, I'm a medieval historian, so I always think in feudal terms, right? So can't be the liege lord who nobody ever sees, and you pay your scutage and you go to war and you do your thing, and you don't get much reward for that. It's really got to be somebody who is here, who understands what we do, and who can work with everybody, with all of the stakeholders, because it's not just the provost, it's also the different levels of administration, the direct reports to the chancellor, as well as the direct reports to the provost, all need to be able to communicate and work collaboratively. At least that's the dream, anyway. Other folks. Yes, Sully.
Hi. I think that the areas that are up there are very good. I think the idea of someone who has vision and who will lead in an effective way are very good. The only thing I want to say is maybe when you get down to your final group of 5 or so, it would be nice to, I would think that a good candidate would go beyond saying, well, I have a vision for this in a very broad way, to saying, well, in terms of how we're going to solve our budget, here are some somewhat specific ideas as to how other state universities who have been exposed to the kind of problems that our university is currently going through These are some examples of how we might approach this, so that if the candidate can go into a little bit of detail about possible approaches, I think it indicates that they have actually considered the problem for some time, and they have thought about it. And I think that might be the kind of question that would help you pick the top candidate out of the final group of 5, say.
Thanks. Other folks?
I just have one verb I'd like to change. The providing innovative resource and program strategies. I would like to see a chancellor who can not only provide but can also cultivate and coordinate, because I think there are a lot of innovative resource and program strategies that exist in this community of scholars and learners, and those need to be brought out and coordinated and cherished.
We all know what the realities are. We all know that we are faced with fiscal issues that possibly you might refer to a hostile political climate for higher education. And so even though we have to think in those terms to some extent, we can also think in a visionary sense. We can think about what we want this place to be in 10 years and how to move that forward. So this is something that I'm asking you to consider in this sense. I mean, we have some very practical things that we need to get accomplished in pretty short order, but we can also think about who we want to be and what we want UMKC to be and how a chancellor is going to be part of that process. And so to that end, what should UMKC want? I mean, this is a complete, like, pie in the sky kind of question. We want what? Obi-Wan Kenobi and Indiana Jones combined? What it is? What do we need? God, you guys are worse than my classes.
How about some direct stable financial support from our city and our metropolitan area? How about a region-wide tax that will go to support the university or something there, something concrete
Would
and
definitely
simple.
be pie in the sky. Be great. Okay, so we're going to move on then. We have one more person. Great. Okay. Yay.
Jane Vogel, School of Computing and Engineering. I think you need somebody that has demonstrated ability to do fundraising and has done so, and has demonstrated ability to reach out to the community and others, both for programs that are to increase pipeline and the community aspects, as well as to get bricks and mortar and better classrooms and better laboratories, etc.
So we have a website that just got sorry. Okay.
Joy Roberts from the School of Nursing and Health Studies. I'd really like to see someone who has had experience pulling a university up out of a really, really tight spot. And I know those people are probably pretty hard to find because everybody's looking for them. But
Yeah,
this
and
is
everybody's
a tight spot.
in a tight spot.
Thank you.
unfortunately, we are not. We are in good company in our situation. So we have a website which got launched this morning. The Chancellor Search updates and the resource information websites are available to you. You can. This is an email address that you can direct questions to and comments to. And I would really urge you to make use of these. You can view updates as they come through the website. Once we have a position description and a profile, the documents will be updated on the website so that everybody can see what's going on. We will have our timeline updated and progress reports updated. I would just like to reiterate that everybody on the search committee has signed a confidentiality agreement, so I'm going to ask all of you, my wonderful colleagues, not to ask people very specific questions about the search because they can't answer them. All right, we can give you very general information about the progress of the search, but we really must retain confidentiality in this process. It's really important. But if you have comments, if you would like to contribute more things to this process, please feel free to email the HR Executive Search email, and we will be happy to compile anything that you prefer to put in writing rather than speak in front of everybody in this horribly intimidating atmosphere, apparently. I know most of the people in this room, and I know that most of you could talk for hours. All right, yes, Jennifer.
I'm Jennifer D. Hamers. I work in academic affairs and student affairs as well. And my comment didn't really seem to fit in any of the areas that you asked for comment in. So I waited to see if something would come up that seemed to fit. So I've spent 20 years of my life at UMKC working in student affairs and enrollment management, and recently became part of the academic affairs division. And President Choi, I mean this with all respect. I mean no disrespect with this comment. But I believe this is the first time that we've ever had a chancellor search on the UMKC campus that an employee from the Division of Student Affairs who represented those offices in student affairs was not included in the search. I know there are a number of faculty, there are several students. I know our staff council chair is part of that group. But when and the reason I raise it as a concern is because when we bring candidates to interviews and then ultimately to campus, obviously students and student success are critical to what we're doing at the university. And I just worry a little bit, no disrespect for the rest of you on the committee, but I worry a little bit that the kinds of concerns that are facing students and the employees who work with them really closely may not get asked. Those questions may not get the profile they might. I'm searching for a word here. And so I guess one of the things I would like is that when we're considering a chancellor, that he or she is very attuned to what's going on kind of in the realm of student affairs and what is impacting students in a broad scale as we go through the search process.
What is your name?
Jennifer D. Hamers.
D. Hamers.
Yes.
Jennifer D. Hamers. How would you like to serve on the search committee?
That wasn't why I brought that up, but I'm happy to serve.
If someone is committed enough to say, this is a voice that needs to be heard because it's important for our students and our university, I commend you for that. So if you can't serve on the committee, recommend another person from student affairs who can serve on the committee. And the more the merrier, right? We have more work to do. But thank you. I really do appreciate that.
We are toward the end. So if you are interested in making nominations or nominating somebody who you think would be a good candidate for the search, we have a website, which I think you can access through the UM System update page. and you can nominate people who will then be contacted by the Executive Initiatives Group and asked if they would consider submitting an application. So we are intending as transparent a process as we possibly can do, while at the same time obviously retaining the confidentiality of potential candidates in this process. And so we will be providing as frequent updates as we can. We have a very short timeline for this process. What we hope is to have somebody in place sometime early in 2018. So we're talking months, weeks, rather than a lengthy process, which is going to make my life really interesting in the next 3 months. But as it is for everybody on the search committee. Any final questions for the committee, comments? Sure. Steve. And if you're a member of the UMKC faculty, you know that you get regular weird little emails from me in the middle of the night or at 5 in the morning. So feel free to email me. I'm easy to find on our email system, and I'm happy to convey questions and comments to the rest of the committee as well.
So if I can just add one more thing. I think it was the dean of the School of Law who mentioned that we're facing a very serious situation with regards to our finances. And I think she used the words like we're in a tough spot. We are in a tough spot. But I'd like to also share with you that if we're looking for a chance who's going to come in and solve our problems like that, we're not going to be successful. If we're in a tough spot, you're part of a family, and your family's in a tough spot, what do you say to each other? We got to do this together. And we have to look internally and say, what can I do differently to make this situation better? Should I spend a little more time with my students during office hours? Should I spend a little more time with my graduate students so that they can produce their dissertation? Do I spend a little more time with the community so that I can get engaged with K through 12? Or do I do more pro bono work as part of my responsibilities in medical school? These are all things that you can think about doing because there's something that we can all contribute to. And if we did do that, this university, with the right leader, will be in a place that's going to be better than where it is right now. It's a great university. No, there's no question about it. But we can be even better. And I'm really happy to see so many of you here at the forum. We're going to be back We're going to be back with additional information. We want to continue to hear your input. There was the email that was provided. Send us your comments. How can we improve the process? What are the characteristics that you're seeking? And nominate outstanding people. Do a search around the country. Who are individuals who are able to transform their institution, who may be thinking about moving to an urban institution like UMKC? Nominate them. You never know. They may accept that offer to come and interview, and that person may be selected as the next chancellor. But if you don't nominate them and they don't apply and they don't come for the interview, well, I can tell you that person's not going to be selected. So let's all do our work. There's some important work ahead. And with that, let me turn it back over to Professor Mitchell, who, by the way, someone mentioned that we seek leaders who are inspirational. Leaders also seek inspirational people that they work with. I happened to see Professor Mitchell walking in this morning, and she had a little bit of a limp. And I asked her, what's happening? I don't know if I can say this, but people know, she needs a hip replacement. But it takes 3 months to recover. So she's not going to do the hip replacement until the summer. That's dedication for our students and our faculty and our colleagues. And there are stories like that throughout the university. And that's what inspires me when I go and speak to the legislators and they ask me, why understand your faculty members only teach 6 hours a week? That is so untrue. And I use examples like that. So keep up what you're doing. I really appreciate it. And like I said, we'll be back again to share some more good news. So thank you.